Hello there, welcome to my review of the Rockford Files Season 2, Episode 15, The No Cut Contract, written by Stephen Cannell and directed by Lou Antonio. The episode begins with Angel trying to get Jimmy involved in a scam to sell horses.
I'm not asking you to do anything that we consider strictly illegal.
You're going to tell this guy that he can have a half interest in a racehorse, and then you're going to show him some bloodlines that are phony.
When two armed goons show up asking for some tapes and claiming that they know Jim is working for King Sturdivant.
King Sturdivant, you remember him?
I don't know anybody named King Sturdivant.
Jim would likely be able to handle this situation were it not for Angel being his usual helpful self.
Give him the tapes, Jimmy.
Angel, there aren't any tapes.
Don't fool with him, Jimmy. Give him the tapes.
The goons trash the trailer until they find some tapes, which Jim tells them is what they're looking for, but turns out to be some of his jazz collection.
There's no King Sturdivant, but on one of those tapes is little Count Basie.
Maybe you should have had some Duke Kelly.
As Jim and Angel head off to file a complaint with Dennis, we're treated to a hilarious conversation between the two, where Angel claims to know all about King Sturdivant.
He's this little African king, more like a tribal chieftain. This king, he's here in the U.S. with one of those African art exhibits. I read about it in the paper. He's here in L.A.
This opening, and this conversation in particular, cement the fact that we are in for a fun, low-stakes episode, offering some light relief after the previous story. There's not really much more to say, as we've had similar mysteries before, with goons setting upon Jim for reasons he doesn't understand, and the confusion continues as he tries to lose a tail they've picked up, only to discover that the people following them are feds.
In pursuit of suspect vehicle eastbound on Alameda.
Which lands him in hot water with a returning Agent Shaw.
I don't know any King Sturdivant. I never heard of him.
The humour continues as Jim has no idea what Shaw is talking about, and Shaw seems to know everything.
King Sturdivant called you last Wednesday. You went over to the hotel where the team was staying. You met him in the bar. Paid you a fee to hold on to him until he instructed you to hand him over to whoever supplied you with a signed affidavit.
No, you got to stop reading those crime fighter comic books. They're turning you into a cluck.
Sturdivant is a pro football player for a minor team who apparently met with Jim and handed over some tapes. At least that's what Shaw is convinced of. And that there are some really heavy players who are after those tapes.
Very tough people floating around the outside of this thing. You're going to be an early casualty.
Jim continues to deny all knowledge and leaves, meeting Angel and demanding his $20 back.
King Sturdivant is a professional football player.
Angel excuses himself as he smells trouble, and Jim tracks down the elusive King as he's big-shotting his way around a TV studio.
I thought you understood you were an alternate guest.
I've never been an alternate my entire life.
It's okay. You can't get out that way. It's a fire door.
Sturdivant is played by Rob Reiner, hot off the success of All in the Family, but without the wig he wore in that role. This introduction might be the best in Rockford history, as it immediately tells us exactly who King Sturdivant is, with his egomaniacal demands being way above his status and his actions being that of a pompous idiot.
He thinks he's Joe Namath. Nobody's ever heard of him. You ever heard of him?
No, I never heard of him.
We get more insight into the character when Jim confronts him, only to be conned into letting him get away. Rockford manages to track him down, and he's making a complete fool of himself at a party.
Will you leave me alone, please?
You probably didn't recognize me. I'm King Sturdivant.
A party where the goons are attending.
Go roping. It's the room right below.
Along with a guy in the sharpest suit that I've ever seen. The goons get a girl to catfish Sturdivant, which doesn't take much, but Jim intervenes before Sturdivant loses his meat head. While Jim tries to get answers from Sturdivant, the king gives him some flannel, and it turns out he picked Jim's name out of a phone book. He then spends a significant amount of time trying to worm himself out of the situation he's in, refusing to clear Jim's name and claiming the tapes are something to do with the Underworld franchise manager of the team he plays for.
The manager of the team I play for is a guy named Dale Fontaine. He's behind it all. I think he might know what the tapes are all about.
It's a real masterclass in snivelling that makes Angel look like Rambo, and this continues when they get to the manager's office, only to find him dead.
He's dead.
Sturtevant uses this as an opportunity to frame Jim for the murder.
You have any idea who killed him?
You did. When I came back here, I caught you in the act.
Why don't you just shoot me and put me out of my misery?
And at this point, it's clear that this episode is all about giving Jim a terrible day, with Sturtevant seemingly going out of his way to make this complete stranger miserable, all to save his own neck. He's not only in abject contrast to Rockford, but also reminds us that Angel might be a lot of things, but he's nowhere near as snake-like as this guy. It makes us understand why Jim and Angel remain friends, because, for all his faults, Jim can still rely on Angel in a pinch. Luckily, it's Dennis who arrives to arrest Jim, and he takes them both to the station, where Sturtevant gives his story under the scrutiny of Beth, who he completely misjudges.
Will you look at her? She's so starstruck, she's speechless.
Jim is not impressed with Dennis for locking him up, or for not going after Sturtevant for filing a false report, but all becomes clear when he spots Shaw at the police station.
There goes your special circumstances.
What's remarkable is how far into the episode we are without a clue of what's going on, and yet it's totally gripping. The way they manage to hold your attention with characters while not really furthering the plot is brilliant, thanks to the tight and funny script and some fantastic performances from all the actors involved. Jim is uncharacteristically angry at this whole affair until Beth is able to clue him in on some of what's going on. King had a club that recently burned to the ground, and the team manager was all set to replace King on the team. Rockford then seeks out Angel to put some feelers out, and we get our Columbo connection.
This is hard for me. I mean, you know, I'm really chicken.
Angel does manage to get some information for Jim, but admits to being too cowardly for the amount of trouble that Jim's in with the underworld. This info does allow Jim to track Sturtevant down, and with some gentle persuasion, gets Sturtevant to come with him. Jim works out that Sturtevant bugged his restaurant, and as it was an underworld hangout, he has recordings the mob would love to get their hands on. Jim's only hope at survival is to trust Sturtevant to get the tapes to the feds. As they go to a party where the girl holding the tapes is, we get a cameo from NFL legend Dick Butkus.
King Sturtevant. I play on the Warriors.
I'm afraid I never heard of you.
And the girl, Lisa, tells them where the tapes are. But before they can get away with them, a couple of hoods show up, so Jim plays one of the tapes and uses this distraction to ditch them. With the goons outside taking pot shots, the cops and the feds show up and arrest Jim and the King.
Where are the tapes?
They're out by the pool in a box.
Who put them there?
I don't think I can go through with that now.
This was a great comedy episode where it never really feels like Jim's in any real danger. And Sturtevant might just be the show's greatest villain, who only gets more and more despicable as the episode goes on, and yet by the end he's actually kind of likeable. The plot is simple and doesn't blaze any new trails, but it is still engaging enough to keep you entertained. But it's really the performances of the cast that make the episode work so well, with everyone more clued in than Jim, and all taking it far more seriously than the tone deserves, which only adds to the comedy.
You didn't really just pick my name out of the phone book, did you?
I'm afraid I did.
After all we've seen Jim go through in this series, it takes a jerk who picked his name out of a phone book to actually push him to the very brink, and that's a great concept for a normally unflappable character. This is easily a 5 out of 5 for me. Thank you. Goodbye.